Greetings. We come now to Vijñāna-bhairava-tantra, verse 69. And this is the somewhat infamous sex verse that some people, such as Osho, made much of. And it has some very interesting points and aspects and some problematic aspects. There are those out there who imagine that the fact that this is verse 69, that the verse 69 is the sex verse, has some significance. In fact, I'm afraid it really is just a coincidence, because if you look at the numbers 6 and 9 together in Sanskrit, they do not provide that inverted symmetry that the English, or rather Arabic, numerals do. So it really is just a coincidence. It's not the author being clever that verse 69 is the sex verse. Why do I call it the sex verse? Because this verse is specifically about sexual intercourse, sexual union. And I'll read it to you. Shakti saṃgama saṃkṣubdha śaktyāveśa avasānikam yat sukhaṃ brahma-tattvasya tat sukhaṃ svākyam ucyate. The stimulation caused by union with a Shakti, a consecrated female partner, gives rise to a pleasure which culminates in immersion into pure energy, Shakti. That is the joy of the principle of the absolute. And that is said to be the pleasure innate to all humans. Okay, let's explore the interesting problems of interpretation here. Okay, first you might question the translation of the word Shakti as consecrated female partner. You might rightly say, hey, that's how the word is used in Neo-Tantra, but is there any precedent for the usage of the word in this sense in classical Tantra? Yes, there is. So if we look at Tantra Loka 29, the consecrated female partner is frequently referred to as Shakti, one's Shakti, one's power or energy. Now, in our modern egalitarian or feminist era, this does seem problematic. This verse, like the sexual sadhana given in Tantra Loka 29, is very much from the perspective of the male practitioner. Having said that, there's no specific reason why the consecrated consort or partner, known as one's Shakti, must be female, right? Apart from the fact that the word Shakti is a feminine word. So I'll leave it to others more well-versed in these matters to debate that point. But suffice to say, the first phrase of the verse is Shakti saṃgama, union with a Shakti, a consecrated consort or consecrated female partner. What do we mean by consecrated? It means that it's not just some random person, but rather a person who, from the perspective of the practitioner here, is an embodiment of Shakti, divine feminine energy, for lack of a better translation. And as many of you already know, I find that translation problematic, but what to do? We do lack a better translation in some contexts. So this is why I say it's not necessarily a female-bodied person. It's a person who, from your perspective, embodies that Shakti, that vibrancy that innate vibrancy of consciousness, that goddess power. So if you experience that, if you're gay, if you experience that in a male-bodied person, there's no reason they couldn't be your consort for this practice. But that itself is, of course, has its problematic elements, because in sexual practice, you are, for lack of a better word, using the other person. Now, this is all fine and good if you're using each other, right? And in the context of a sexual relationship, you can have normal sex, as it were, that's about connection, or whatever sex is about for you, I guess, and occasionally have a sexual interaction that's about a specific kind of practice like this. So it's not to say that all your sexual interactions should be purposed or utilized for the sake of your spiritual liberation. Now, let me just come clean. I feel uncomfortable about this verse in several different ways. It also has a kind of sex positive and liberating message, which I'll come to. And it also has just problematic elements that no matter, how we look at it, if we're honest about the meaning of these words, there just are elements that we today find problematic. And we shouldn't pretend otherwise. Okay, so due to this union with a consecrated consort, or Shakti, there is saṃkṣubdha, excitement or arousal or intensification or stimulation. Those are the meanings of this word, saṃkṣubdha. Now, this is what you can see. This is a long Sanskrit compound, the whole meaning of which, that which culminates in immersion into Shakti due to the excitation communion with a Shakti. Now, in my translation, I'm taking the word Shakti in two different meanings. First, as the consecrated partner, and second, as energy itself, Shakti in the broadest sense. Why would I do that? Because that's indeed exactly how our commentator takes it. That śaktyāveśa means immersion into pure energy. Now, this phrase, śaktyāveśa, can also mean penetration into the Shakti, because the word āveśa is not translatable into English because of its range of meanings is not duplicated by any English word. Immersion, it can mean penetration. Now, I do know a lot about this word because actually this word is the central term of discourse in my PhD dissertation. And it's used in many different ways. So could it mean sort of something more earthy here, penetration into one's Shakti or partner? Yes, but then it's a bit redundant. We already have Shakti saṃgama, union with one's partner. So I do side with the commentator who says we should take śaktyāveśa as immersion into the pure energy of consciousness. Okay, so here's the meaning. That which culminates in immersion into energy due to the, or facilitated by the excitation caused by union with a consecrated partner. That is the bliss of the principle of the absolute. That is the bliss of the brahma-tattva. And that is the bliss or joy, sukhaṃ, innate, that is innate. It's an innate joy. Now, this second half of the verse is interesting because it's interpreted in very different ways depending on how sexually conservative the reader of the verse is. And when I'm talking about interpretations, I'm not talking about modern translations here. I'm talking about traditional interpretations we see in the commentaries. So the sort of conservative reading of this, which I don't really agree with, is that this this joy of sexual union is like a tiny taste of, or a faint echo of the bliss of the absolute, which you attain upon full and final liberation. So we see this in Shivopadhyāya's commentary. He specifically uses the word echo, like the echo of a bell. This bliss is like the echo of that supreme bliss of the absolute. The problem is, that's not what the verse says. The verse says, it is that. It is the bliss of the absolute. And I think that reading is justifiable because we have this phrase, śaktyāveśa, this total immersion into the pure vibrancy of consciousness. Well, if you've actually immersed, right, then this sexual union has ceased to be sexual per se. It's become a vehicle for being completely present. And indeed, the commentator cites Sanskrit verses that talk about that, how in the most sublime kind of sexual union, you forget about everything else. You are utterly present. You're utterly absorbed, right? Now, if that absorption transcends all forms of separation, including separation from your partner, but also separation from everything. If it transcends any sense of separation, which it can, then the verse says, it is the bliss of the principle of the absolute, right? It's just, there are more than one vehicle for immersing in that bliss, and this is one of them. So that's one important variation of interpretation. And then we see the phrase sukhaṃ svākyam ucyate. This joy or bliss or pleasure is said to be innate. It's innate. Now, the conservative reading of that is, you must understand that this pleasure doesn't come from your partner, and it doesn't even come from the sexual intercourse itself. It's innate in you. It's your own bliss, and it's not dependent on the actual act of sexual union. Now, I have no problem with that reading, but I think it's more natural to take this phrase as simply meaning, hey, this is a form of joy or bliss that we can all access. This is a way innate to us as human animals, and not just us. Bonobos seem to enjoy it a lot. This is a form of bliss, though, that's innate to us as embodied consciousnesses, specifically as human animals, and why not experience it? Why not enjoy it? Why not go as deep as you possibly can into it? Okay, so lastly, could this verse possibly be referring to something else other than sexual intercourse? Well, the terminology in the verse is very sexual. Nonetheless, some people do read it as something non-sexual, which would mean simply there's an excitation due to union with energy that culminates in total immersion into energy, whatever that energy may be. Sure, it's technically possible you could read it that way, but then it's a very vague verse. Then it would just mean, it's just unite with energy, and you'll get excited, and then you go deep into total immersion into that energy. Okay, maybe, but then it would be quite vague, right? But who knows? Maybe that is. Maybe the author of the original scripture is saying, whatever energy arises, unite with it. Let yourself be one with your energy. Let that give rise to an excitation or stimulation or intensification, and then fully immerse even more fully into the energy, and then you will access the bliss of the absolute. Okay, why not? But again, in Sanskrit, this terminology these words are words that we find in the context of sexual practice. Shakti and saṃgama, union, right, or intercourse. Saṃkṣubdha, excitation, arousal, intensification, stimulation, and so on. Okay, any questions? Nope. Hopefully that's because I do a good job of anticipating possible questions. That is something I really try to do as a teacher or sharer of this material, is anticipate a variety of possible questions and answer them. Okay, so the last point to make about this verse is that despite what I said earlier about using the sexual experience or one's sexual partner, actually I want to take that back, because what we have here, if we just look at the Sanskrit, is an implication that this is a natural opportunity that arises whenever sexual union is what you might say energetically complete, energetically full. And again, this phrase sukhaṃ svākyam, that it's innate, that this potentiality is innate. So it seems to be saying, you don't actually need to do anything to purpose this towards your spiritual liberation, because it is simply a taste of the joyous state of non-dual awareness. Because again, and this is clarified in the commentary, that this kind of sexual experience is one in which all sense of barrier or differentiation, all dvaita, dissolves. Anyway, so that's I guess all I have to say about that. And there's one more verse. This is the second of 3 verses on sexuality and the role of sexuality in the program for spiritual liberation of this particular scripture. So I will do one more video. Thank you all. Om.